A new diplomatic chapter may have begun in Washington, but whether it can survive the realities of southern Lebanon remains far from certain. Israel and Lebanon have signed a U.S.-brokered framework agreement aimed at ending one of the region's most volatile conflicts. But with Hezbollah outside the deal, Israeli forces remaining in southern Lebanon and strikes continuing despite the ceasefire, major questions remain over whether diplomacy can overcome the realities on the ground. Is this the beginning of a lasting settlement or simply another pause in a long-running conflict? I'm Rehan Morsi and this is Think Tank.
Our world is becoming unhinged.
Israel and Lebanon have signed a U.S.-brokered framework agreement after 4 days of negotiations in Washington, marking a significant diplomatic breakthrough. According to Axios, the deal outlines a roadmap towards a future peace agreement, including limited Israeli withdrawals from 2 pilot areas in southern Lebanon, where the Lebanese army, supported by U.S. military monitors, would assume control. But major challenges remain. Hezbollah has rejected the agreement, while Israel says its forces will remain inside a security zone until the group is fully disarmed. Israeli officials also insist the military will retain freedom of action against any perceived threats. Although a fragile ceasefire has largely held in recent days, Israeli strikes have continued, underscoring the gap between diplomatic progress and reality on the ground.
A diplomatic breakthrough in Washington, but an uncertain future on the ground. After days of U.S.-brokered negotiations, Israel and Lebanon have signed a framework agreement aimed at laying the groundwork for lasting peace and security. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio described the deal as a roadmap to stability, as Washington seeks to prevent the Lebanese front from undermining its broader agreement with Iran. The 14-point framework commits both countries to living in peace and security as neighboring sovereign states. It calls for an end to hostile, political, and legal actions, cooperation on detainees, and the return of human remains, while reaffirming each country's inherent right to self-defense. At the heart of the agreement is the restoration of Lebanese state authority. Under the framework, the Lebanese armed forces are expected to extend their control across the country, following the verified disarmament of non-state armed groups, with international support led by the United States. But the biggest challenge remains Hezbollah. The group is not a party to the agreement, and there is no indication it is prepared to withdraw from south of the Litani River. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has insisted Israeli forces will remain in southern Lebanon until Hezbollah is disarmed, despite announcing pilot plans to transfer limited areas to the Lebanese army. Although cross-border clashes have eased in recent days, Israeli strikes have continued, highlighting the fragility of the ceasefire. For Lebanon, the agreement represents a diplomatic opening. For Israel, it is built on security guarantees. And for Washington, it is another test of whether diplomacy can succeed, where repeated ceasefires have fallen short. The framework may have opened the diplomatic door, but turning it into lasting peace could prove to be its greatest challenge.
For more on this, we're joined from Beirut by Taqiyuddin Tanir, a military expert, and from Washington by Ginger Chapman, a lawyer and political analyst. Thank you both for joining me here this evening. Mr. Tanir, let's start off here with you. Israel and Lebanon have signed the U.S.-brokered framework agreement. Do you see this as a genuine diplomatic breakthrough or simply a framework that postpones the most difficult issues and the inevitable, given the response as well from Hezbollah?
Good evening to your channel, and to your viewers. Yes, as a matter of fact, I think it's a diplomatic breakthrough. Not all of it, but they start to be, as you know, since 2006 till now, there were meeting in parallel before agreement of 2006 has started and declared. But now they are in the same core, in the same meeting. They are together, not in parallel, and a lot of things have been changed. But as a matter of fact, I think that it's not really a very long time work agreement framework, because it still has something not declared yet and not clear, like the withdrawal of Israel, the timetable of Israel staying in South Lebanon, who will disarm Hezbollah and how, and about the lack of Lebanese army and the government nowadays. All of this, let us think that it's really a very good job at the beginning, but I think it's not, it's for a certain time. They must be supported by another negotiations and put another frame, because it still has some vacuums. I'm afraid that it will be a little bit face problems and obstacles.
All right, we're going to get back to the idea of the vagueness of this framework, but let's get Ms. Chapman's take here as well. Washington describes the deal as a foundation for lasting peace. Yet, what concrete mechanisms, if any, are there to ensure the implementation of this framework, since there's also a ceasefire in force and it still has not been completely implemented, with Israelis even striking Lebanon just today?
Yes. Well, first, thank you, Saida Reham, for having us today, and greetings to your viewers and your other guests. And Dr. El-Tanir is correct that this meeting is a diplomatic breakthrough for getting the Israeli and Lebanese ambassadors together in the same room to work out a deal. However, the deal itself is suspect because on one hand, it does codify the present conditions on the ground. It appears to be a giveaway to Israeli demands. And at the same time, it sets up a conflict with the Memorandum of Understanding that J.D. Vance has signed. Some of the things that are alarming to Americans is that we see that many of the deals Trump has started, he has not followed through on and seen to finalization. And even though the Lebanon-Israeli deal sets up a time for further negotiations, it appears to just deepen the quagmire of war. First of all, there is a developing rivalry between J.D. Vance and Rubio. J.D. Vance is pro-peace. Rubio is pro-Israel, to the neglect of the American interests. And once again, the deal between Lebanon and Israel directly contradicts the Memorandum of Understanding, Article 1, that demands a ceasefire on all fronts, including Lebanon, and this deal does not guarantee that. And in fact, by saying that American soldiers would go in just deepens the quagmire. In truth, what would guarantee peace in Lebanon is if the Lebanese army occupies the disputed zone, the yellow line zone, and the Lebanese army acts as a buffer force in that zone, and Israel withdraws from Lebanon altogether. That would guarantee peace. That is not what we are seeing in this agreement. And in fact, this agreement appears that it will create more controversy trying to implement the pilot areas, trying to send in the Lebanese army, which the United States has intimidated and bullied the Lebanese government to effectively disarm the Lebanese army so that Israel would feel secure. And now that we need the Lebanese army, they will need reinforcement, thereby dragging the Americans in and deepening the quagmire. Trump has now been put into a position where he's going to have to decide between the MOU and this agreement. And once again, this may only muddy the waters instead of leading to lasting peace.
Okay, we're going to get back to the idea of conflicts of interest here, but let's get Mr. Tanir's take here as well. What do you think of the idea that Ms. Chapman said there, that this framework somehow muddies the water and causes some sort of military quagmire and reshapes possibly the security architecture of southern Lebanon?
First of all, please allow me to salute your guest before I answer your question, because she saluted me. I thank you so much, and I'm going to answer you. Yes, you know that Israel pretend that nowadays there is a safe zone, a yellow line zone, and other kind of zones, as she mentioned and she declared. I think nowadays, and really let me be frank with you, with the role of drones and with the role of rockets, especially let us say ballistic rockets, there is no efficiency for zones, believe me, because what you can do from 20 kilometers, you can do it from 40 kilometers or 50 kilometers, or maybe more than 100 kilometers nowadays. I agree that Israel needs her north to be safe, and it's I guess that our country also needs to be safe. Now you are giving our army a very accurate mission in order, like you call it, the experimental areas. I think it's not an effective thing to give such an army, Lebanese armed forces, with all its sovereignty, to be like have a one job for other armies, occupy your land and occupy your country. I don't know, but nowadays, as you know, all what we have is better because we are the weak link in that negotiation, and really, United States administration now is using the peace by power, and Israel use power of force. Yani, at the same power of right of or right of power. It's very big difference between the two. We are working on right of power.
Yes. Well, since you mentioned the idea of difficulty there, Mr. Tanir, how do you see the situation? Because it seems like both sides, at least other than the Lebanese government, of course, Hezbollah, and the Israelis, seem to be asking the other party, for instance, the Israelis saying the Hezbollah has to disarm, and the Hezbollah says they have to leave the Lebanese territory, but there is no way to achieve one without the other, and neither one wants to let go. How can this be resolved within the framework?
Yeah, really, till now, as you said, they signed a work frame agreement. Until now, ceasefire don't put under consideration, because till now there is still strikes, there is still some bombing here and there, and shooting here and there from Israeli troops, and maybe from the other troops also. But I don't know how they can capture this zone. How can they maintain a safe part, a safe area, in order not, because Israel gives herself the right to have the freedom of movement, not in South Lebanon only. In every part of Lebanon, she feels that there is a threat for her in the north of Israel or in all Israel.
Ms. Chapman, now you heard Mr. Tanir there talking about having the right to do as it wills, basically, no one holds them to account. How do you see that within the framework? I mean, the agreement calls for the Lebanese armed forces to restore state authority and then, disarming these non-state armed groups like Hezbollah. How realistic is this objective, given that, the Israelis have free rein to do whatever they want? They've even targeted Beirut, the capital.
Yes. Well, first, the Israelis are very good at drafting agreements that contain impossible terms and poison pills for the other side. So the term that the Lebanese army is going to disarm Hezbollah and then move in is one of those terms that is impossible because, as your esteemed guest, Dr. Tanner, has pointed out, there is no mechanism for disarming Hezbollah, and Hezbollah is not a party to the agreement. So for two parties to make an agreement that binds a party that did not sign the agreement is unworkable. And with respect to Israel having freedom of movement in the occupied security buffer zones, this contradicts the United Nations articles and it contradicts the Geneva Convention, because if Israel occupies that disputed zone, then they become responsible for the Lebanese people that live there. And that's because they are protected persons under occupation in the eyes of the Geneva Convention. Israel is supposed to be responsible for their food, medical supplies, humanitarian needs, to maintain the legal structure, to ensure that they stay in their homes and that they are protected persons. So this agreement also sets Israel up in violation of the Geneva Conventions, UN articles. This is a legal contradiction.
Yeah, we've even seen statements coming in from ministers within Israel itself saying that they will maintain, even if they reach an agreement, they will still maintain a buffer zone or an occupation, as they've described it, a buffer zone in Lebanon indefinitely. How is this even going to be possible, and what does it look like under international law?
Under international law, this agreement is a violation because, once again, it does not account for the human and humanitarian rights of the people in southern Lebanon. And we see the Israeli leadership making speeches in their own language in Israel saying that they will never leave southern Lebanon. They are entitled. And this same attitude is going to lead to their failure as the international community becomes increasingly intolerant of Israeli wars of aggression. Right now, the United States is the only country that is protecting them. As J.D. Vance has said, they are angering the United States, but Trump is the only state leader that is protecting Israel. All of the other leaders are growing impatient and short-tempered. This is Israel's last chance to essentially, the United States voters and citizens are becoming impatient with Israel. We see that this war is costing billions of dollars a day and is increasingly damaging to the United States, to the global economy, and essentially the entire world is suffering and waiting for the Strait of Hormuz to open, commerce to flow freely again, while Israel is using the United States to halt all progress with Iran and using Lebanon as a means to do so. So this agreement with Israel and Lebanon, unfortunately, this framework appears designed to not succeed and to create a conflict with the Memorandum of Understanding. So we have not made progress, and now the wild card is, what will Iran do in response? And it should be noted that the flare-up in the Strait of Hormuz, when Iran fired on the ship America was trying to sneak through by the coast of Oman, this only shows that the Strait of Hormuz needs a regulatory body. the risk of unrestricted, unregulated traffic in the Gulf of Persia opens up the possibility of piracy, just like we saw among the Somali pirates attacking in the Red Sea, attacking along the Punta coast. Yes. There is the risk that hostile actors will enter the Strait of Hormuz. Pirates could attack any of the Gulf nations. An unregulated transit is a risk to Iran and all the Gulf nations. Yes. Iran needs to establish a regulatory authority to reduce the risk of exactly what we're seeing, and the United States needs to make concessions along those lines to allow the peace process to go forward.
Mr. Tania, now you heard Ms. Chapman there talking about Hezbollah not being party to this agreement or signing the agreement for that matter. Can any security arrangements in southern Lebanon succeed without the full participation of the non-state actors or armed groups like Hezbollah who are actually party?
Actually, it's very good and smart question. It's the key point of all the framework agreement. Who will disarmament Hezbollah? Because if nobody disarmament Hezbollah, there will still fights and bombing and strikes and battles between Lebanon and Israel through Hezbollah and the people there against the occupation of the land. Israel will not withdraw unless Hezbollah disarms. And Hezbollah will not disarm unless Israel withdraws. So we have like a chicken and egg, who is first and who is later. So we have a very, very big obstacle and really a very big difficult in order to put the implementation of the framework under consideration. Unless the memorandum of understanding between Iran and America took place good and stay in its own way, I guess later on maybe Iran will ask Hezbollah to maintain that framework agreement between Lebanese and Israel. Otherwise, there is no solution at all, because from my point of view, I think that our Lebanese army until now cannot disarmament Hezbollah according to certain circumstances. As we listened yesterday, member of Hezbollah Parliament, Mr. Fadlallah, said that we are going to a civil war and this government is not illegal, blah, 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 and many things later on.
So you agree that
they are refusing totally that framework agreement.
So do you agree then that, the Israelis have put in within the framework or even a ceasefire points that are considered poison pills, whereby they put the Lebanese army in an impossible situation, asking them to disarm Hezbollah? Mr. Tanir, are you with us?
You are asking me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, can you please repeat the question? I'm very sorry.
Given what you just said there, you agree with the idea that basically the point that the Israelis put in is a poison pill, asking the Lebanese army to disarm Hezbollah. They put them in an impossible situation, basically?
The Lebanese army will not disarm Hezbollah. According to my news, according to my knowledge, according to my information, I think till that moment, army will not do it at all. I don't know what's happening in the future, in the next week, next days, next month, but till now, I don't think at all that our Lebanese army has the ability, because it has a lack in its situation and lack of political situation now. And there is, as you say, as you listened and saw yesterday, gathering, cutting roads, and declaring some wars against government and against that framework agreement.
Ms. Chapman, Washington has linked stability in Lebanon to its broader understanding with Iran. And then, Hezbollah has said that they would not be interested basically on this framework, that the Americans should stick to the memorandum of understanding between them and Iran. And this should be how they deal with the Lebanese front. Do you agree with which assessment here, and which diplomatic track would best work for the Middle East and for the U.S.?
Yes, and if you're asking, do I agree with Hezbollah? Yes, I do agree. And we should not even use the term Hezbollah. These are Lebanese citizens who are resisting illegal military occupation of their land. And we know when the government cannot protect its people, then the people have to protect their government. And this is what we see the Lebanese resistance, the people in southern Lebanon doing, which includes many Christians who are having their churches blown up, which is repugnant to American citizens. In addition, whether Muslim, Christian, even Jewish, no one, this is a violation of their humanitarian rights to be driven from their home. And yes, as Dr. Tanir says, this is a chicken and the egg problem. Lebanese army cannot disarm Hezbollah, and they cannot move in, and therefore Israel will never be satisfied and will continue to take land under the excuse that it's for their security. And if you listen to the Israeli Knesset and former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, Israel is already saying that the next threat is Turkey and Egypt. Turkey is a threat because they are in Syria, and Egypt is a threat because they are on the border of Palestine. And now Israel is making threats against Turkey and Egypt, which will lead to the emergence of a Middle Eastern NATO-style bloc, which consists
what
of
do you think
Turkey,
would be the best
Egypt,
solution?
Pakistan, Saudi.
I mean, what do you think would be
In
the best
this
solution for the
instance,
U.S.?
The United States is under the thrall of the Israeli lobby, AIPAC, Israeli donors. This is increasingly repugnant and intolerant to American citizens and American voters. We are going to have a civil war in America over control of our own American government. In the meantime, the steps Iran has set forward in the MOU are designed to incrementally lead the United States to a peace that we are unable to reach on our own. If the United States can meet the conditions of the MOU, that will be a path forward step by step. And with respect to Israel and Lebanon, the only solution is the Israeli withdrawal from Lebanon altogether. Use the Lebanese army as a buffer force in that region so that the citizens of Lebanon can return to their homes. Israel cannot steal all the land of their neighbors, and ultimately the United States will reach a point that we cannot protect Israel much longer. And the leverage Iran has is going to change. As the Strait of Hormuz calms down and Iran uses the strait less for leverage, then their leverage will be strikes, military strikes on Israel itself as leverage. So the battlefronts are rapidly changing. This is a fluid, very dynamic situation. And the conditions change rapidly, as we have seen when Israel uses the United States to impose unworkable agreements on the parties in the area. So there is going to be a lot more conflict. This is not over. This is not far from over at all. And the United States is going to have to contain Israel, which is setting up a battle within the White House between Vance and Rubio. We see that Trump himself is conflicted. He flip-flops. After the G7 meeting, he said Iran should have ballistic missiles. All the other countries do. Why can other countries have nuclear energy? Iran cannot. So Trump has glimmers, moments of acknowledging reality, and then he has moments where he just knuckles under to Israeli demands. America is going to have to fight her own civil war while the battles in the Middle East continue. And for the first time, the world sees the risk of nuclear weapons being used over the Russia-Ukraine situation, as well as the increasing risk of a desperate Israel resorting to nuclear weapons in the Middle East. So as we see on this channel, the world is still becoming unhinged,
Yes.
and sane, rational actors must try to make these agreements in a way that they can resolve these ongoing conflicts.
Let's hope we don't reach the nuclear disaster scenario there. But let's get Mr. Tanya's take as well. Now, we spoke a bit about the ceasefire and the framework itself that's been signed just recently. But again, Israel's strikes have continued in Lebanon. Does the military reality on the ground already contradict the political commitments made in Washington? And given the Israeli strikes, do you think this is intense pressure, for instance, on the Lebanese army as well as the Lebanese government that this framework is just not working?
Unfortunately, they declared early, very early, and since a long time, that they will not submit to any ceasefire, and they have the right, according to their theory, they have the right to fight in every place in Lebanon when they found any kind of threatening or warning their North Israel or Israel itself. They all, as you know, yesterday they bombing Nabatiya Fawa and some villages like Beit Yahun and killed many people there. Even they signed even the ink of the ink where they signed, it doesn't wet yet. Unfortunately, they are not submitting to any ceasefire. They only doing no. It's not that army will work alone without a protection and covering from political situation and political needs.
So
If they do what they ask from political situation, they are not working in independence at all. But as I told you, they said and they told every person and every country and every concerned party in that situation, they will always submit to their own security without asking about ceasefire or anything at all.
Okay, Ms. Chapman, looking at the broader regional picture, the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's announcement comes on the heels of Washington's wider diplomatic engagement with Iran. Is Lebanon becoming part of a broader U.S.-Iran strategic bargaining chip, or can this framework stand on its own if it's sort of revised, or if, as you said, the U.S. exerts some form of pressure on the Israelis?
Yes. The framework cannot stand on its own, and indeed, because it conflicts with the MOU, this framework is going to be very, very difficult to implement. And we see once again that Israel has set the United States up for failure, which suits Israel's purposes because it allows them to continue their operations under the guise that there is some type of diplomatic solution being worked out. And once again, if we reach the point that Donald Trump has to send American troops into Lebanon to fight Lebanese citizens and civilians on behalf of the Israeli army, this is going to become repugnant to Americans. It will be unworkable. And once again, it sets America up for continued failure. Also, Lebanon is critically important to peace in the Middle East. I've seen Israel for decades has been trying to invade Lebanon and seize control of southern Lebanon. At the same time that they use Lebanon for many purposes. First, they have a deep psychological need for Lebanon from the founding of their country. They feel entitled to that land as Greater Israel. Second, they use Lebanon airspace to attack Israel, to attack Syria and their other enemies. And third, they use the land physically to drive a barrier and physical wedge between the co-religionists and Arab brothers that are in Syria, Iraq, Iran. So Lebanon is a highly strategic location for all of these psychological and military reasons, in addition to having abundant resources of fresh water from the Litani, farmland, fertile farmland, and massive gas fields offshore. So Lebanon has become strategically and resource critical.
I get your point there that, I apologize, I have to cut you off because we're out of time, but the point is clear that Lebanon is an integral part of a possible future deal there. That was Ginger Chapman, a lawyer and political analyst, and Khayedin Tanir, a military expert. Thank you both for joining me this evening, and thank you for your insights. That brings us to the end of today's episode of Think Tank. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.